In the news the other day, there was some news articles about the 300,000 people in Ireland who haven't taken a certain treatment for a certain illness in Ireland. Now, I don't want to discuss the illness, I don't discuss the treatment because YouTube and Facebook and the social media are all over this topic, and I just don't want to get censored and thrown off because of speaking about the treatment for a certain illness. But I want to talk about something else that I believe I'm allowed to discuss openly. It's a free world. We're allowed to have our opinions. Because I am one of 300,000 people in Ireland that have decided not to get this particular treatment, which we're not going to talk about. Why I didn't get this particular treatment is because I had the illness last year and I still have antibodies against this illness. So I've decided, okay, I've been tested and I still have antibodies for this particular illness. So I don't feel I need this treatment. That's my decision. And I'm entitled to, we live in Ireland, we don't live in North Korea, so I'm entitled to have my own opinion on this, and that's my personal opinion. However, I was in a very large multinational restaurant food chain. I'm not going to name it in this video. I don't want to talk about them particularly because they're just following Irish law. I'd been traveling. I did the Camino in August, September, and I came back. And passing through Longford, I stopped in this famous multinational food chain to have a €7 burger, fries, and drink. And so I went in there. They had a touchscreen thing, so I ordered that. I got my receipt, put in the number of my table, and I sat down at the table to have a €7 meal, which I've had many times in this chain and in other chains. Not the healthiest option, but they don't have fast food healthy options in easily accessible places. That's life. Once a month won't kill you. So anyway, I was sitting down at this table having my €7 cheap meal, sitting on my own, minding my own business. And a lady came over to me and she says, sorry, do you have any papers showing that you've had a particular treatment? And I said, no, I don't. I had just come back to Ireland and didn't realise, this was early September, didn't realise Ireland had gone full-blown totalitarianism. We couldn't have a cheap meal in a restaurant. Oh, sorry. Sorry, no, you can't eat in here. And people around the restaurant were looking at me and I said, what? I can't have a meal in a restaurant. Oh, no, you sorry, you can't. You'll have to eat outside. And I said, it's raining outside. I'm just doing my job. I'm just putting food on my table, on my children's table here. I'm just doing my job. I'm following the rules. And I said to her, do you not think this is discrimination? And people around the restaurant were looking at me, minding their own business. I said, do you not think it's discrimination against me, an Irish citizen, had recovered from an illness that, it wasn't infectious. I actually had a test for this particular illness to fly back to Ireland 2 days before, a PCR test 2 days before to fly back to Ireland. Apart from having recovered from the illness last year, I also I've been tested several times this year. Also had been tested for not infectious, and actually had the cert, the European Green Pass cert for this particular illness with me. Oh no, that doesn't work here. Sorry, you have to have had a specific treatment. Okay, so I could have sat there like Rosa Parks and waited to be arrested and shunted out of the restaurant and blah blah blah. And I just said, look, give me my money back. I'm leaving. I wasn't going to sit out in the rain as a second-class Irish citizen. And like many other people in my situation, it's like, okay, the 22nd of October is coming, so let's just wait until this silly season is over. Until the Irish government realizes that there are people like me that are allowed to make our own decisions in life. And I'm hearing this discussion going on in the media I'm hearing, hear the talk. A friend of mine, she was saying, look, I haven't been out in a restaurant either with the kids because, she doesn't want to, for whatever reason, take this treatment. And new treatment which hasn't been around for very long, hasn't been around for decades. And she has decided she just won't. So she's in the same boat. I mean, let's wait until the 22nd of October so we can get our freedoms back. And you hear in the media now that, these guys are causing, this minority, which I am part of, we are causing this great catastrophe in Ireland, for that the hospitals are overwhelmed, the ICUs are overwhelmed. We, people like me, are causing this. And then I'm thinking, okay, but I can name 10 people I know who've had this treatment twice. 10 people I personally know who've ended up with this disease. 2 of them have ended up in hospital with disease after receiving the treatment twice. And I'm just thinking, yeah, okay. So, where's the science like this? It's not like we can put our hand up and say, hello, Mr. Experts in Ireland up there in Dublin, can we ask a question here about this? It's not like we can go to a press conference and hold our hand up. Can you explain something for me? Can you explain the science? Can you educate us? Then we have to listen to this one side, and then, my personal experience, my personal opinion is not answered, It seems like today, if you've had this particular illness, after 6 months, your immunity expires, and in order to have your civil liberties returned, you need to take this treatment so you can get a piece of paper so that you can move and live normally in Ireland. Please, can some scientist explain this to me? And you're not allowed to ask questions. And I think this video is a very legitimate question. It's a very legitimate video for me to ask. It's like many people around Ireland. It seems all of a sudden a minority is being demonized. And we can think all through history in societies where minorities have been demonized. You can just think for a second over the last 100 years in Europe where a minority was demonized, where their whole existence as a minority in society, how they operated, how they lived, how they made their money, was demonized in order to justify their whatever. We don't just think about it. And there's been various minorities over the course of history that have been removed from society. We even had them in Ireland. We had a minority, an ethnic minority in Ireland that, these guys are always doing this, that and the other. So look, if they have a funeral in a town, I'm not going to mention them, but this is what happened. Because some of them did some things, the whole of their ethnic group was demonized, they couldn't book a hotel. This really happened in Ireland, guys. And we had a whole movement in Ireland to help that minority, to make them feel included in Irish society. And me, who is part of this minority that's been created in Ireland now, me that is part of, because I've not submitted myself to a treatment for a disease I've already had last year, I am now in that minority, and the media sees us as free reign to be demonized, to be shunned. We are anti this and anti that and anti the other. And I just find this very interesting. This whole situation. I'm putting this video out here that I'm not anti anything. I've made a choice. There are hundreds of thousands of people that make the choice to overindulge in alcohol, to have fatty liver disease every year. There are hundreds of thousands of people in Ireland who smoke, and we all know the dangers of smoking and the health consequences of smoking. Lots of people make choices in their life for various reasons, and we don't demonize them. you know. Um, so, you know, I just have this video here. It's the 16th of October 2021. And, you know, we see in Irish society, we have to extend this this discrimination beyond the 22nd of October. Okay, but people like me, we're not allowed to ask simple questions of the authorities. They don't allow this in Ireland. When you want to know who rules over you, ask who you are not allowed to criticize. You know, I don't want to be held accountable for holding a piece of paper to say I've taken the products of two commercial companies that make this product for profit. I don't want to be beholden to those two companies, or to have my life to be beholden to those companies. I've not mentioned the disease, and I've not mentioned the companies, and I'm not mentioning names here. I'm talking about the principle at stake here, my freedom. You know, and I'm not an extremist here when I'm talking about my personal freedom. You know, if I had cancer, I could refuse treatment. You know, if I wanted to smoke my life away, I could do that. And if I had a heart attack because of that, I would be treated in hospital. If this treatment that they're giving to us in Ireland neutralized the disease completely, so that you didn't get it and you didn't pass it along, maybe there would be some moral principle to apply to it. Okay, if you take this, you don't get it at all, 100% neutralizing, you don't get it, and you don't pass it or around, and then maybe there would be some moral foundation to push this. But there isn't. We all know this. We've seen it in other countries. The vast majority of people who are getting this disease in the UK today have taken this treatment. And you can just look at the UK's report for week 40 and go into the data there. So, you know, we have to talk, you know, we have to make our decisions based on the science. And the government hasn't allowed us to ask questions about this. We have been created. We've been turned into, demonized as a minority. And we have been educated that we should never treat minorities as second-class citizens. You know, our society has gone above and beyond to be inclusive. And all of a sudden, hold on a second, guys, you know, people like, we're not included anymore. You know, we're waiting for our Freedom Day on the 22nd of October, when we'll finally be able to eat in a restaurant without being asked for our papers, without having to, you know, show our papers. You know, I just find it very, 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 very curious how we as a society have bought into a narrative like this. And as I said, I spent all my summer traveling in Spain, was never asked once for my papers. Slept in dormitories on the Camino in albergues, 20, 30 people in a room, no precautions. You know, that was 5 weeks, over 100,000 people, and not one person that did this pilgrimage died of this disease. Not one out of 100,000 people walking it. There was 3 or 4 cases of people getting it, and yet I was able to survive that. I didn't have to show my papers. When I come back to Ireland, I still cannot go into a restaurant today and sit down and have a cheap meal without showing my papers. You know, my personal choices on this matter should be my personal choices. I should be able to make my own decisions about my health, and you know, and that's my choice. I've had this particular disease last year. Many people I know have had this disease last year. My daughter had this disease last week. She's perfectly fine, you know. We should be able to make our own choices. Our choice, our liberty, our freedoms should be respected on this particular matter. And that's how I view it. And that's how 300,000 other people in Ireland view it, you know? So, I'm not here entering into any controversial areas. I'm not here trying to create some conspiracy theory. I'm living in the real situation of today where I can't go into a restaurant and have a meal in Ireland without proving I've had a specific treatment for a disease I had last year. I had it for 2 months actually last year. We should be able to discuss the science of what's going on. We should be able to freely have a conversation about this in Ireland without being turned into some type of, second, third class citizen. We're put into that corner. Oh, you're this and you're that and you're the other. What's the difference between a little a label that you put on your clothes to say that what you are, or a piece of paper to prove what you are? When you start down this road, where does it stop? We're doing this today for this particular thing. Where will it be tomorrow? Think about it, guys. I just find it incredible that my own country, my fellow citizens, will hear me having a discussion in a restaurant, which they all could hear, and nobody stood up to say, "You're right. You shouldn't have." I was sitting there was nobody in front or behind me. There were people over the other side of the restaurant. It was during the day. It was practically empty, actually. There was 10 people in the restaurant for 40, 50 people, and nobody cared. Nobody cares what's going on. Just think, it's just temporary. Well, we thought it was temporary until we hear the discussions going on in the media saying, well, no, people like me, you still have to take this. You still have to be part. You still have to submit to something that we're not comfortable with. Many people are not comfortable with. And we have a choice. We should have a choice. The WHO has said it should be voluntary. It has always been maintained that this particular treatment should be voluntary, and that you shouldn't have your life turned upside down. We see in Italy, people are being fired now because they haven't submitted to this. How can something that's voluntary now become, okay, it still remains voluntary, but you're not allowed to have your livelihood. You're not allowed to work. You're not even allowed to work from home in Italy if you haven't submitted to this. We've seen the Swiss guards being fired from the Vatican because they haven't submitted to this treatment. Incidentally, some of those had the disease last year. So there is, it's really a concerning time, and people are just thinking. If you think back to a certain period in European history, it didn't happen all on one day. It was progressive. The laws that were introduced to make sure that a certain ethnic group in Europe, the laws that were introduced were progressively introduced. Oh, today you can't do this, and a month later, oh well, sorry, now today you can't do this. You can't open your business like today. Like, it was progressive. And then people went along with it. Oh well, okay, it's only for a short time. How when's it? It'll end so soon. I mean, surely it can't go on like this. Have we not learned as human beings what happened last century? Have we not learned? I just feel very, very uncomfortable. We live in an Irish state where, unless I submit to taking the commercial products of 2 companies, which I won't name, I don't want to talk about, but my whole existence, my freedoms in Ireland are contingent on me taking products from 2 commercial companies that, quoted on the stock markets, two commercial companies, I have to take their products. In another country I don't want to name, they pushed this out. They made everybody get it, and then lo and behold, oh look, now you've had two treatments of this. Oh, 6 months later, now we have to top you up. And your whole existence is now contingent on you being topped up. And I just feel it's very, very uncomfortable for many people like me what's going on. So, I will remain one of the 300,000 in Ireland. Of the 300,000 in Ireland, our government is saying the majority of people that are in hospital and ICU are part of us. In real terms, how many of those people are? There's 40. So okay. But as I said, we should be able to freely discuss this, to have a free conversation in Ireland, to have a debate in Ireland on both sides, and we haven't had that in Ireland. It's been all one-sided the whole year. Nobody has been allowed to question this. Our political system has collapsed, in my opinion. That they're not able to ask. We're not able to ask basic questions from our experts on this. There are many people that would like to ask questions. We're not. So I'm not going to discuss this. I think everybody can draw their own conclusions here. I'm having a discussion. This is my reflection. I never thought I would live in these times. I never thought in the Republic of Ireland I would have to show my papers that I had submitted to a certain treatment to be able to get a €7 meal in a restaurant and sit down. I never thought that this would happen in my lifetime. And where, and when I hear the conversation going on in the media, we are conspiracy theorists, we are this, we are that, we are the other. It's not just conspiracy. I've had this disease last year. I don't see why I should submit myself to treatment. Especially when you think about, for example, Africa, one of the largest populations in the world, less than 10% have even been offered this treatment. Think about it. Less than 10%. Oh yes, we think we're great humanitarians, but we it's the first world seems to be very polarized against making sure that because first world people like me, rich people in comparison, we are we should be treated first, right? We should get access to this first. We should get access to the top up treatment first as well. When less than 10% in the whole continent of Africa haven't even been offered the treatment. Think about it, guys. I mean, this is just me having a reflection about this. And it's, I think we should be allowed to have a calm, rational, open discussion about what has happened in Ireland, in the world on this. We should be, without being me labeled as something that, that doesn't represent me. I've had many treatments in my life for many other things, and I'm fine with science and medicine and so forth. So we should be allowed to have a discussion, but we don't seem to be allowed to even have this in Ireland. We don't seem to be allowed to have a basic discussion. So okay, so YouTube, please, I'm not here discussing anything other than talking about the principle at stake here of free choice, a principle which the WHO, for example, still supports. It still says that this treatment should be voluntary. It still remains voluntary. And if it remains voluntary, then okay, it's voluntary. What So there's no conspiracy here, guys. It's a voluntary treatment. You have to submit to it voluntary. If it's not voluntary, if the world has now decided that this treatment is not voluntary, okay, then let us know. Let's understand. Okay, are you saying it's not voluntary now, that we have to submit to it? Because I haven't seen our legislation in Ireland change to say it's not voluntary. You know, it seems like, yes, they're still saying yes, it's voluntary, but slowly we restrict. If you don't submit to this voluntary treatment, we will take away your freedoms. You know, we will ghettoize you. We'll put you in a ghetto until you voluntarily submit. You know, it mightn't be a physical ghetto, walled ghetto, but it is a ghetto of sorts. That's, you know, if none of us, the 300,000 in Ireland, can walk into a restaurant today, sit down, and have a meal, where do we go? We go to a tent outside the restaurant, to our ghetto outside the restaurant. You know, I live beside a restaurant down here, and, you know, inside you can go in, and then they have a tent outside for people and families who are like us, the 300,000. Thankfully, you know, I've decided I'm not going into any restaurant in Ireland. I go up to Northern Ireland, which thankfully still does not have these totalitarian, in my opinion, restrictions, so that you can go in and have a meal. You can go in and have an ordinary pizza. So there is some freedoms on the island of Ireland for us. But I don't consider myself a conspiracy theorist here. I don't consider myself radical in this. I'm not out there protesting, but it's come to the stage where, you know, citizens in Europe should have the right to talk about this and to not be discriminated against and labelled and ghettoized and so forth and so forth. You know, human beings, citizens, have made, you know, make choices of their own throughout their life, you know, and we should be allowed to make our own choices now on our own health, my opinion.